AI, artificial intelligence, is a part of our life, whether we like it or not. This is the On Boys Parenting Podcast. We are your co-host, Jennifer L.W. Fink of buildingboys.net, and I'm Janet Allison of boysalive.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being our listeners and supporting our sponsors. AI, artificial intelligence. Ironically, I Googled to ask, what is AI for this intro, and had to kind of chuckle because less than a decade, just the idea of Googling something was unheard of. Now, as Google says, we have AI, which is the use of technology expanded to create machines that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. When you really think about that, it may feel kind of scary because it is so new. But that means our kids are likely learning to use it at a faster rate and with more facility than we are. And hopefully they are using it with integrity. Enter Angela Radcliffe. Angela is the author of Quantum Kids, Guardians of AI, Story Quest, and Activity Book. She's a clinical research expert, AI enthusiast, and a mom of 3. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to talk to fellow mothers about the things that we have to grapple with for our kids.
Absolutely. Yep. Our kids are outpacing us on this one. So hopefully you'll help us get up to speed today. So trace for us the origins of your AI story.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Of course, AI has been around for a long time, but unless you're in an industry that was dealing with the original sort of artificial intelligence, nobody really knew about it. It was another one of those tech disciplines, like, were you a programmer? So about 10 years ago in my career, I was really active in trying to figure out new ways to get patients to participate in clinical research studies, because still we don't have enough representation of different people in clinical research studies. And that's how new medicines come to market. And I realized that some of the ways that we were talking to people, they could be different. And part of what could help make that different is we needed data. And I started to really understand how data works and started to get sort of peripherally involved with those in my workplace who had dealt with artificial intelligence. And back then, it just was sort of a topic on the horizon. But as I got deeper and deeper into the space, by the time, fast forward, I'm working for a pharmaceutical company in drug discovery in their technology department. Suddenly, large language models have come on the scene. So what we think of as AI now, Chat, GPT, Claude, et cetera. And we were incubating these experiments where these large language models, these AI tools, were searching through and being able to discover drug candidates at a pace that outpaced scientists, of course, bench scientists who have to sit there and really pour through the data manually at this exponential pace. And for me, that was the moment where I thought, wow, this is going to be a game changer on every single level. So having that peripheral experience with it and then getting the opportunity to look at and do some early experiments really helped develop my technical chops to better understand it. But I'm not an AI expert by any stretch. I am a applied AI expert. And I think that's what we all have to become.
You used AI to write your book, and tell us about that experience. And the book is very, it's, as you said, it's a story quest. So it's really engaging for children, but also very engaging for adults who actually don't know anything about AI. I know, Jen, you use Chat GPT in your writing, and there's levels of using it, but tell us about writing a book. Plug into, the computer. I want to write a book about XYZ. Does it work that easily?
Yeah. It certainly didn't work that easily, right, Jennifer? I mean, you had that experience.
I mean, if it did, I wouldn't have been struggling these last days and weeks with trying to write a book.
Well, when people ask me, how long did it take you to write the book? I always say about a month. And people go, a month? I'm actually like a writer by trade. So early in my career, most of my career has been focused on the communications and, education and literacy space. And I wrote a memoir that's coming out shortly, and it's essay style fiction. And AI didn't help me with that because heaven forbid we add any more embellishment to the craziness that's been my life. But I thought one of the challenges in trying to explain AI to people is coming up with these tangible ways to connect it to things we already know about. Mm-hmm. And with my daughter already having some interest in using it, I thought, I better figure out quickly how to help her understand the power of what she's dealing with. And so for this book, I used AI as a thought partner. AI did help refine some prose. So the story part was a second thought. Initially, I was just going to do a workbook. I wanted to just have the activities, the prompts, and things like that in the book. And I never thought about actually writing a story to go along with it. What I did was I started with AI and I would say, okay, I need to explain quantum entanglement to kids. What are some ideas of an interesting activity, like a card trick? I said a magic trick. And AI was the one who came back and said, what about a card trick? And AI and I had to go back and forth a lot on the card trick that did make it into the book, because sometimes while it made sense, I'm thinking, I'm a kid. I'm going to pull off this magic trick for my friends and family. I have a daughter who loves magic tricks. And anytime, a kid is like, here, do a magic trick, and then they can't make it work, they're so crestfallen. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't want that to happen to kids, right? When they're trying to do these activities. So I had to do a lot of testing it. Did this make sense? Did it work? Did this activity actually connect? Did it teach what I was trying to teach? So I tried to pick things that kids like to do. Magic tricks. There's a foldable paper exercise in there. The kids love doing the little fortune teller paper. How can we use that to help them?
I just want to explain that. The things that for many of us who maybe grew up in the 80s or 90s, you literally took your piece of notebook paper and you folded it into the little fortune teller thingy that you might do at recess to figure out who's going to marry who at some point. And yes, I love that you incorporated that, because it's an example of where we, the parents, were, and using this very tangible tool to help explain these digital concepts to children.
Yeah, pattern recognition. We teach kids that anyhow in elementary school, but we probably rarely think about it as a STEM activity. I certainly never thought about pattern recognition. When my oldest Spencer was young, he loved watching Bert and Ernie. I mean, who didn't love watching Bert and Ernie? And Bert had this thing called pigeon patterns. And I remember Spencer just loving this pigeon patterns game. So he was learning pattern recognition, and it's something that was in the little workbooks. But in the book that I wrote, it's a coloring page, because kids are really into coloring pages right now, but it's an intricate coloring page of a bee. I'm also a beekeeper. So that's a little secret fact about why that's what's in the book. But just connecting these tangible things, what I realize is we don't have to tell kids, here's what we're teaching you and why we're teaching this to you. We just need to infuse the concept in something they know, and then it becomes an anchor skill that they're comfortable with deploying. And that was a big piece of it. But then as I was putting it together, I thought, Vivian, my 12-year-old, she's really into these books that are almost like graphic novels. It's very popular these days, the Dog Man books, things like that, right? And so I thought, maybe it needs a story for kids. And perhaps that was overkill. But I came up with the concept. I came up with the characters. I came up with sort of the storyline, the architecture of the book. What would the kids be doing from mission to mission? I came up with the missions because I really wanted to connect it to social causes that I care about and I want our children to care about. And then AI helped me, and AI got pretty repetitive. So you'll definitely find some times in the book where you're like, AI definitely helped to write this, because in the early days of AI, it really couldn't pick up on your voice. But oh man, if you put some prose into Claude or some of the other new tools, you can have it really express your voice. And you can write whole novels that sound like you or another famous author. So it is a fascinating area where AI is certainly going to have an impact. But for me, it was great because it allowed me to complete the concept of this book without having the time to sit down and actually write a really excellent young adult novel. I thought good enough was good enough for the story, and the activities were really the anchor, the meat of the book.
I think a point where a lot of teachers, and I know educators, Janet works with teachers too, are feeling some frustration is that these tools are progressing quicker than a lot of us can keep up with them because we do have other responsibilities and jobs, which may not be keeping up with AI. And so what you just described, this experience of kind of partnering with AI and using it as a tool with this back and forth to refine your ideas and build on them. Very responsible, very ethical uses of AI in the creative process, similar to what I was telling Janet that I've been experimenting with. And then we're dealing with fourth graders and college students who are like, well, she told me to write a report, so I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and say, write a 5-paragraph theme on blah, 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 include these things. And then we as parents and educators are somehow supposed to explain to our kids how and why that's wrong when we're not even really sure why or how it's wrong.
Yeah, the ethics aspect of artificial intelligence is so challenging. And, you know, if I have any criticism of my own book, and of course I do, because after you put a piece of work out there, you think of all your coulda, woulda, shouldas to make your creative work better. But one of those criticisms is maybe I lean too heavily on trying to push down the throat of kids, like their responsibility with data. And every time you click the I accept button, you're giving your data away. Now, hopefully I wasn't that heavy handed. I'm being a little exaggerated to make a point, but you're so right. My middle daughter, who's a high school teacher, she is definitely seeing this in her classroom, and her district just came out with a small little training for them, but there's still no AI policy in a lot of schools. And here's what we're starting to realize, to your point of like, what is right and what is wrong? Mm-hmm. There is this aspect of AI that I think people are starting to grasp, which is this isn't software. This isn't replace Google. Of course, that's how we've thought about it. But we have to start thinking about AI as a peer, a person, almost a human, which makes people really anxious when we say it, right? Because, oh, that sounds like that's exactly how we will end up, with Terminator Skynet, is if we start treating AI like another human, it's going to get smarter than us, and then suddenly we'll be taken out. And trust me, there are so many extreme points of view on either end of the spectrum, how useful, how unuseful. There's a famous AI ethicist who just put out a post yesterday on how he thought people are just making such a big deal about how disruptive AI is and how it's just not as disruptive as people think. I don't agree with that opinion, but I also don't agree that we're going to have the days of Terminator either. I'd like to say I'm an AI optimist. And I think the one thing that we have to think about is if we're going to treat it like a peer, then it actually allows us to anchor with our kids and even ourselves sort of that golden rule of treat something as you would like to be treated. Treat someone as you'd like to be treated. Because if you put kids in that frame of mind and you start to think about like, okay, if you are working with a friend on a homework assignment, mm-hmm. and you were collaborating with that friend, how would you go about doing that? Would you let them give you all their ideas, and would you put all their ideas down on your assignment and then turn in your assignment and not give them any credit? So it changes the frame that we're thinking about when we start to think about what does it mean to treat it like a person instead of thinking like, oh, this is a technology we have to control. We haven't done a great job of controlling technology. We've had a lot of impacts, unintended consequences from social media and other things like that on our kids. And so I think we're in a new era of like, personal responsibility and teaching kindness, teaching those things are actually going to be the foundation for how we can treat AI as an ethical partner.
What a fascinating discussion. More after these messages from our sponsors. The school year is underway, and you might already be seeing where your child feels frustrated or places where your child's ready to zoom ahead beyond what their curriculum is supporting, IXL Learning can help. IXL Learning is an online learning program that enriches your homeschool curriculum, and it can also supplement your child's traditional learning. It offers practice in math, English, language arts, science, and social studies. It encourages students to be curious and empowers them to choose how to learn. IXL offers interactive practice problems, educational games, lessons, and video tutorials on so many topics. It's easy to use, it's time-saving, and it's flexible and personalized. Plus, it's fun for kids. They love the positive feedback, the awards, and the educational games. And for you, it's trustworthy. IXL is trusted by 15 million students worldwide and has proven to improve performance in over 75 scientific research studies. So make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL. And On Boys listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there.
Avola Nourishing Face Oil is one of my new favorite things. I've been using it on my face for about a month now, and I love the way it makes my skin look and feel. Hydrated, smooth, healthy. And after one of Avola's founders told us that it has healing properties and can be used on scars and burns, I decided to try it on a healing cut on my hand. I've had cuts in that area before, and they always take forever to heal. But I had Avola, so I put a few drops on it in the morning and at night, and I was surprised by how quickly and how well it healed. Avola Nourishing Face Oil is made with only the highest quality organic plant oils. Give it a try. Shop Avola Nourishing Face Oil and use our ONBOYS discount code, that's ONBOYS, and get 10% off your order. Fall is a crazy time of year for most families. School has started, often sports and drama and practices, everything is in full swing. Finding time to grocery shop and feed your family may seem like an unsolvable problem this time of year.
Imagine that you could have farm fresh produce and autumn inspired recipes delivered right to your door with HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers all the pre-portioned ingredients you need to make easy homemade meals. You get the proteins, the veggies, the sauces, the spices, along with simple instructions that walk you through each step in the cooking process.
This is exactly the kind of thing that will help you survive those busy nights. When you have some HelloFresh boxes on hand and meals, you can whip up a quick meal in less time in some cases than it would take you to go through the drive-through or park and wait for your food to be delivered. And you know that it is healthier food that you can eat at home with your family whenever they all arrive.
And I talk to a lot of parents who want to have the experience of cooking with their sons. What a great way to get started. These are perfect. So make cooking enjoyable. Cook together.
You can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freeonboys. It's applied across 7 boxes, and it's for new subscribers only, varies by plan. But that's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeonboys. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
But if we think about it as another software and we only think about how do we regulate it like a software, we're going to really miss an opportunity to, I think, allow our children to not just get a leg up from having this amazing technology available to them, but also in sort of leveling up the way they discern what is truth from fiction, the way that they consider the information and how information's created, and get that benefit of that knowledge, that group think that they have access to that we never had access to before.
So as you talk about that, though, I think this ethic conversation is so crucial. And there's a place of, as an adult, as you know, I've been around for a few decades now. It's like, how do you look at something and trust that there was a human expressing their thoughts and their opinions and their emotions? Really mistrustful of, oh, I read this thing.
Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Where did it originate? And that it's a little creepy.
It is a little creepy. It's as creepy as us having a conversation about leaf blower spark plugs the other day, and then suddenly I'm getting served leaf blower ads, right? Like, I know we've come to an age where we start to expect that type of thing. I think the start here is disclosure and teaching our kids that trust and transparency are the new currency. It's trust and transparency. These are the things that are the higher order values. And how do you learn how to trust something? And I tried to model that by how I labeled my book, not just in disclosing the use of AI in the beginning of it, but you'll notice that it doesn't say that I wrote the book. It says I created the book. And I purposefully did not say written by or authored by. I said created by, because I wanted to indicate that I didn't write the whole thing. I was the architect, the creator, the idea generator, and that I use tools and other things to help me do that. And so I think it's going to be really important for us to start to get to a place where we learn how to disclose that. But right now there's a bit of a stigma too around, and this is sort of the messy middle, right? Where there's kind of a stigma about disclosing that you use AI for things. Even with my clients, I have a sort of like a rider on my contracts that say things like, here's how I intend to use AI in doing the work that you've hired me for. You need to tell me what those boundaries are, because maybe you have confidential information and I have to make sure I don't use those in an open system, things like that. But we really have to start right there at the very beginning of how do we address this trust and disclosure. We already have a trust problem with information. We already don't know where things are coming from. I generated a podcast the other day using Google. Google has their own large language model called Gemini, but they also have something called Notebook LM. And with Notebook LM, which is a great tool for students, you can put any number of sources in, like 5 articles, and then you can, within seconds, generate 4 different artifacts. One's an FAQ, one's a summary, one's a study guide, like a Q&A, and the last is a podcast. And the first time I heard it, I was so amazed that I realized a new level of danger in this topic of trust, because I asked it to explore this really interesting topic that probably won't be interesting to your listeners about the FDA's guidance on decentralized clinical trials and diversity. But
I'm interested, Angela.
Like regulatory stuff that was really important. And I uploaded it, and in minutes, there are 2 hosts. They sound natural. They go back and forth, and you have this conversation. So yeah, one saying, wow, the FDA, like, they realize this is a really important issue. And he's like, yeah. And can we talk about this one thing? And I'm thinking, like, it's a 9-minute podcast. It sounds like 2 humans who have just had a conversation. The ability to make something so complex, so accessible in minutes, that is the power. But the flip side of that, of course, is you could also upload 5 really awful propaganda things on any horrible topic in the world and spit that right out. And for people who are uninitiated, they would have no idea this is a manufactured podcast based on a bunch of terrible information. So I don't know how we solve for that yet, but I do know as a mom, I feel that I have a responsibility to start right there. AI basics to me start with trust and transparency and learning how to find those boundaries in a very sort of messy middle, which is exactly where we are right now. And things are moving so quick. It's hard to know what to do. But I think if you just go back to that foundation of trust, it's a good place to start.
I want to ask more about that. And I will state straight up that this is as much for me as a human being, but I think it will be helpful for our listeners as well. So first of all, that podcast story that you just shared is terrifying to me for a few reasons, including the fact that I have literally been hired to help write, create, and host podcasts just like that one that you shared. So great.
Yeah.
That work may go. We'll see. I was in a professional conference last week, and somebody that has a reputation within this industry for kind of being ahead of trends and kind of, aware of like where to look for what's going on with transparency. His message was similar to yours. In this era, especially in this era, trust and transparency are going to be even more important. And I struggle as a human with how to effectively communicate that to our kids when even our pretty young kids can look around and go, that's not how you win in this world. That the people who are not behaving ethically and the people who are exploiting tools often are the ones who seem to be getting ahead. And I know that's a very messy question, and I don't expect that you're going to have the solution for that, but help us grapple with that reality.
Yeah, I will. You went deep, so I'm going to go really deep here for a second, which is I had the pleasure of listening to Scarlett Lewis speak. Scarlett Lewis is one of the moms of a Sandy Hook child, and she wrote this amazing book. And the whole point of her message was she was able to forgive the shooter, the mom, to get through this tragedy with her family, because she realized the way to combat that was simply in teaching kindness to children, teaching love, making that the core thing. I almost get choked up talking about it even all these years later. But,
yeah,
when we have something this big, it gets so overwhelming to us as parents because we want to protect our kids. We want to teach them how to do right in this world. And we have all of these, it's like being in the middle of a fight circle and people are coming at us and we're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Hopefully your listeners can't see me doing karate moves on the screen here. But I think that she's onto something with that because she couldn't change gun laws in this country. She couldn't change school shootings. She couldn't change the fact that her child was taken from her, but she could try and make sure that we didn't manufacture, for lack of a better word, another child who ended up in a situation where they felt the need to harm others. And that to me was like, wow, that is such a powerful lesson when we're feeling overwhelmed about what we can and can't control. We aren't going to be able to control how quickly our governments regulate artificial intelligence. We are not going to be able to manage the types of stuff that our kids are seeing. I think the only sphere of control that we have is this concept of teaching AI for good and helping our children see that the world can win on some really big issues and they can be the heroes and champions of those. Like our kids can cure cancer. Our kids can solve climate change. Our kids can end the unhoused crisis in the world. They can do that because they have the ability now to take knowledge from all over the world from centuries of knowledge that's been generated and is being fed in. And they have this powerful quantum computing environment that is going to help surface solutions, ideas, and things that they couldn't put two and two together in the same way I mentioned with those bench scientists. They've been working their whole career to try and cure Alzheimer's, cure cancer, right? And yet a machine is doing it much faster. And it's back to your first point, Jennifer, about, hey, what does this mean for all of us in our jobs? I'm doing my consulting work in a lick of the time that I did before certain deliverables because there's so many more powerful tools to get some of those things done. I can whip up a video. I can make something that I just don't normally have the skills to do. There are tools that can help me do almost anything now. But I want us to remember too that in every sort of evolution of human history, when something came to disrupt our way of life, think about automobiles. It's a great example that a friend of mine, Daniel, often shares, has shared with me is, okay, it's true. The horse and buggy drivers did not have a job. Those horses, the horse trainers, the vets, we didn't have the same jobs for those people anymore. But suddenly we had manufacturers of cars. We had mechanics. We had drivers of cars. We had, right. So the industry that was created around the, invention of the automobile, did it displace a whole way of transportation? Yes, but it created all these other ripple effects. So I think the hardest part for us is we're in that zone. We're the generation that is going to experience the disruption first, in the same way that we got to go through our kids experiencing cell phones for the first time and our kids experiencing social media for the first time and all the new things. I think we'll be able to face this too.
This is so fascinating. My brain is going all these different directions, but I love the automobile analogy. That I think we can all relate to that. And I think that, yes, we want to believe that our children are going to use this for the, the good and the kindness and love and all those things. And reality is there's going to be cyberbullying. There's going to be now the ability to take someone's image and put someone else's face on it and put that out. And of course, that wouldn't be our child that would be doing that, right? Wrong. There's those places of how to manage that within our own families, within our own communities. And I think, of course, knowledge is power. And as the parents, we do need to get ahead of this. We can't just go, oh my God, that's too much. I can't compute. I can't deal with it.
I can't compute. Nice choice.
I said that. I really said that. And I think part of that too is then going back to this place of creativity, of learning. I'm thinking about that fourth grader who can just, I'm going to plug in and have a report written for me. We are missing the whole human component of, sitting and struggling with a topic, of that deep thinking that only humans can do. We can speed up writing a book. We can speed up editing and generating ideas. As adults, we can do that because we still have that other piece. But our kids, if they go to that place first of AI, of relying, like leaning on that technology, they're missing the whole human struggle, I guess you would say, of coming up with how do I write that? What words resonate with me? That deeper place that you're both writers, we're all writers, that deeper place that we go of self-examination, of looking around us with new eyes. How do we keep that part and help our children develop that part when they can just be like, I want to write that, and get it quick, get it off quickly.
I'm going to say something a little controversial here, but what if we haven't been exposed to what will happen when our children don't have to think in the way that we thought? What are the new ways of thinking that might emerge? We just haven't seen it. So it's true. ChatGPT has a feature right now where you can, literally push a button and you say the question and then it talks to you. It doesn't type it to you. It talks to you. So earlier this week with a math problem, it's always a math problem for us, we were going through the common denominator, least common factor or something. And we had a dialogue with AI, my daughter and I. And that's great on the surface. It helped us deal with math in the moment. But what if, because Vivian got to grasp that concept much faster than lots of repetitive teaching by the teacher, lots more homework, AI was able to really tailor it to her. And so she got that concept quicker. And now the things she's thinking about or grappling with or sitting with are very different things. And I think because we associate sort of the way we think and the things that we like, that creative process, we may be dismissing that there's a whole new creative process we just don't know about yet. We haven't seen yet. And that might sound a bit like a cop-out answer there because this is a tough one. It's what are our kids going to miss? I am choosing to focus on what our kids are going to gain because I don't feel in control of what our kids are going to miss. Like, our kids miss what we all had as children. We did just go outside and ride our bikes until the streetlights came on and our parents called us home. My kids did not have that experience. Maybe my older kids had more of an experience, but my youngest daughter, it's just not a world that I'm like, yep, go run along with your friends and come on back when you feel. My older kids didn't even have cell phones, whereas I can't imagine not being able to get into the bus broke down, last school year. And it was sort of our final thing where we were like, oh, our kid was stuck in a school bus and we haven't let her have a cell phone yet. And we really want to be able to talk to her. God forbid something really bad happen, a natural disaster, a field drill, something. Yeah. So I don't always love where these big topics take us because we don't have the answers. Yeah. But I do try to approach it with curiosity. And I think that's the best thing we can do is just keep looking at it with curiosity and seeing what aren't we seeing? What are the questions we don't know to ask yet?
So this is a big evolving topic. You are a applied AI expert. You've spent time in this space. I'm learning more. We're all learning more. And clearly we, the adults, don't have it figured out because there's a lot to figure out and because it's evolving. Given that is our current reality and parents' knowledge will vary greatly depending on their personal exposure, what are some maybe common sense or relatively simple steps that you would recommend to parents? Because what's become clear to me through this conversation, like this is happening. Our kids are going to grow up in a world with AI. So don't use it. It would be crippling our children actually for the future. So what are some things that you suggest parents do to explore this world with their children?
Yep. We as parents need to get on board, and Angela has some great suggestions coming up after these messages from our sponsors. Girls rock. The future is female. How many times have you seen those slogans and thought, wait a minute, what about our boys? I know I have.
Yeah, I think we all have. And it has been really hard to find boy affirming, boy celebrating shirts and merchandise. And so we are thrilled to announce that we have partnered with Jack Kammer, a previous On Boys guest. And there is now the Boys Are Great shop. It is an online shop and you can get shirts, hoodies, notebooks, water bottles, you name it. Boy affirming merchandise. Some of it says boys are great. That simple. There is some great parent merchandise. There is a parent shirt and hats that say my boys are joys. And I'm going to get myself one of those. That's going to be for me. As the holidays are approaching, some of you are starting your shopping. We wanted to let you know about this. Go to boysaregreat.shop/onboys. I will include the link in the show notes, and I encourage you to share this link and this shop with your friends who have boys also.
Do you ever wonder what is going on under the surface for your son? Do you ever wish that you just had support, just had someone to talk to? You can. I have been a family coach for over 20 years. I have worked with countless parents to help get their family back on track to help you communicate in a boy-friendly way. You can schedule an absolutely free call with me at boysalive.com/call. Now, I encourage you to only take advantage of this offer if you are ready to make serious, positive changes in your parenting and in your family. We'll talk for 30 minutes. If it feels like we're a good fit, I will tell you how we can work together privately. That's boysalive.com/call. You do not have to do this alone.
My most common tip is use it every day as much as you can. And that sounds like, oh, do I really have to? But there's lots of fun ways to use AI in a way that will help you start to imagine what our kids are dealing with. And I'll give you an example. Go down to your refrigerator, open the door, take a picture of the inside, upload it to your tool of choice, Claude, GPT, Perplexity, Gemini, whatever you've got access to, and ask it to suggest 7 meals for your family this week based on all it sees in the refrigerator. Instantly, you will get a menu back. You can then say, you know what? I'd like to theme the menu for my family Disney. So can you take those dishes you recommend and give me a Disney themed name for each of these and description? And it does it in a second. It's a silly little thing, but I think unless we do some silly little things like that, we don't really understand the difference between Google or, like I mentioned, there's this voice chat feature on GPT now. Instead of, when you're in the car, you're walking down the street, whatever, and you're going about your business and you have a question that occurs to you. I don't know about you, but for me, like all the random questions like hit me in the weirdest times. Instead of thinking, I'll write that down later, I'll take a note, hit that button and have a quick chat with GPT. Okay, here's the thing I'm thinking about. Is there anything else I should be thinking about? And it will say to you, like, yeah, that's a really interesting thing that you're concerned about the soccer game, blah, blah, blah. But maybe here's some things that could make getting 3 kids to 3 different soccer games on the same weekend possible. Right? I mean, again, I'm trying to use silly examples because I feel like we have to start in the places that aren't scary for people. Yeah. And then just use it. Just use the tools. There's so many free tools out there every day. If you are a painter, ask it to suggest your next painting. Ask it to create a coloring page for your kid to color alongside you while you paint that picture. There's just so many ways that we could just use it in these sort of low friction, fun use cases, as we say in the tech world, that we really have no excuse not to try those. There's not a lot of risk in us exposing important stuff about ourselves and our families and doing that. There's not a lot of risk of us getting hallucinations that could do some terrible thing for us, right? Have it write your vacation holiday schedule. Have it help you figure out, a complicated thing you're going through as one of your older kids. I don't know about you, but parenting the older kids is harder than parenting the younger kids, I'm finding. And sometimes I'm like, how do I advise my 24-year-old daughter that this is not a good decision without being that mom? Have that conversation with AI. You will be surprised at the information that you get back. And that's the other thing. And this came up already on our chat, but it just use it like a thought partner. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to replace your thinking, right? It's just a way of stimulating a new way of thinking. So I would say that's the first place. And the second place is use it for doing fun things with your kids. There's so many fun AI tools out there. You can create songs with your kids. You can create art with your kids. You can ask AI to come up with how many times do our children say, I'm bored, Mom, what is there to do? Go ask ChatGPT. Don't say mom, say ChatGPT. What can I do to not be bored? Or I'm not getting my room clean. Ask ChatGPT to create a game for you to get your room clean. So there's lots of fun ways we can be using it. Just start using it. That's my number one tip and strategy.
Over here, just I can feel it in my body because I'll raise my hand. I have never used ChatGPT. Have never even heard the words Gemini and Claude, whatever ones you're saying there. I'm so low tech. So I'm feeling it in my body of oh my gosh, this feels really overwhelming. Yet when you say, open your refrigerator, take a picture of what's in there and figure out what's for dinner, I kind of like that because that's not a strong suit of mine, is figuring out what am I going to do with that half a head of cabbage that's been sitting there for days. So, okay, I'm in this like, okay, where do I go? Do I just type Chat GPT into my little browser window? Is that what I do?
That'll work.
Okay.
It sure does.
And then I just type in and I mean, that's where I am technology wise. And I think there's probably some of our listeners out there who are on the same level as me.
Yeah. Tip number 1 is, look, if you're comfortable with Google, then go to Google and ask Google, what's the easiest tool for me to use? It's going to send you to Gemini. Probably it's their tool. Why wouldn't they? Or what free AI tools are out there? That's a great way to start. Just Google that and pick one to play with. The other thing is, at the core of AI and treating it like a person, again, it's really like the kind of questions that you ask it, which we call prompting. That's the word for it. When you prompt the AI, all you're really doing is learning how to ask better questions. So the first few times you play with it, you'll ask a question and you'll get an answer and you're like, this is terrible. Why did I even bother with this? Nope, you just didn't ask the question right, or you didn't ask it well. So there's a difference between saying, what should I do with half of a head of cabbage? And I have half of a head of cabbage left that I have to use in the next 3 days. And I don't have many ingredients on hand, but I would hate for it to go to waste. Is there some side dish suggestion you could give me? That's a very different question than, what should I do with cabbage? And so the more we can give it context, also AI is great at pretending to be people. So again, if you think about it as a person, guess what? You get to tell it what kind of person you want it to be. I would like you to act as a family therapist and tell me how to give my young adult daughter advice on healthy relationship boundaries and how to establish those with her boyfriend. What tips do you have for me as a family therapist? Oh, you can even tell it you want it to be a family therapist that specializes in addiction. All right. So giving AI that role, like telling it what person to be, that's another great place to start. If you can just master, like, trying to practice asking better questions on any of these free tools, I think it'll take the sort of like, it feels like this invisible barrier of like, where do I even start? It's overwhelming.
Yes.
Pick one tool. You don't have to worry about 10 tools. Pick one tool, one that you like, and get comfortable with it. And I would suggest that most of these tools, they all have different large language models underpinning, but a lot of the ones that you'll see out there use one of the same 4 core models. That's the data, the information that the AI has underneath it. So a lot of these additional tools, they're all using the same model. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick unless you're doing really advanced things with AI at this point.
I'm going to recommend that even adults who are not that familiar with AI and feel really like, I don't understand what this is or how it works, you get a copy of Angela's book and look at it or read it with your children. It's engaging, it's easy, and I think it breaks it down in ways that you may be able to understand a little bit more what's going on behind the scenes, which helps explain like the how and why AI works. Your book is Quantum Kids, Guardians of AI, Story, Quest, and Activity Book, and I will absolutely put the link in the show notes so it's easy to find. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a fun conversation. My favorite podcast to date, I have to say.
Oh, yay.
It was awesome.
Well,
nice
Angela, you certainly opened my eyes a little bit, and I'm going to go find out what to do with that head of cabbage as if I were Julia Child. How about that?
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were.
Here, Janet, we'll do this to close our conversation. Just us, doesn't have to be in the podcast. We'll just go to, hi, I'd like you to pretend you're Julia Child and tell me what I can do with half of a head of cabbage left in my refrigerator. Let's see what she's got.
Bon appetit. Bon appetit! With half a head of cabbage, you can create a delightful dish called cabbage au gratin. Start by shredding the cabbage and blanching it briefly in boiling water. Then make a creamy bechamel sauce, adding a touch of nutmeg. Layer the cabbage in a baking dish, cover with the sauce, and sprinkle generously with grated Gruyere cheese. Bake until golden and bubbly. Voila! A simple yet delicious way to elevate your cabbage.
Wow.
And if I wanted to, I could ask her a follow-up question and she would say, sure. So I could say, will this work with red cabbage or green cabbage? And we're still having a conversation. Absolutely. So it just can become a dialogue. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing. And we're absolutely including that in the podcast, Angela, because that is amazing.
It's a lot of fun. I think once people realize that there can be some fun had here too. I mean, hey, ask it to come up with a dad joke. Now and again, I like to one up my husband on that one. So.
Oh, there you go. Angela, thank you so much for educating us today and helping us see the possibilities of this new technology. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being open-minded. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Janet, I want you to take a picture of your cabbage au gratin, and then we'll put it in the show notes later.
Okay, I will.
But a real picture, not an AI-generated picture of what it would look like. We need to see what you made.
By the way, I've never had AI don an accent until today. So that was even fun for me because, you know, I've had lots of conversations, but I've never asked it to be somebody who would be associated with a certain culture. And of course, with Julia Childs, this is what she's known for. So the fact that my AI voice that I usually listen to, and she's like, and here's how you do a math problem, was like, bon appetit. I was like,
oh, so great. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Well, spoiler alert, I never did make the cabbage a la Julia Child, but what a fun way to approach learning this new field that we have to. This is the On Boys Parenting Podcast. We're your co-hosts, Jennifer L.W. Fink and Janet Allison. Thank you for being here and for supporting our sponsors. Be sure to share this episode with a friend who might also be wondering about artificial intelligence.